Welcome. We're getting started with our first of the Paying for College virtual information series. And tonight we have Pat Paxton from West Shore Community College joining us. And we'll be getting started just a little bit after 7 with understanding the financial aid process. While we're waiting to get started, you can hear my cuckoo clock telling us it's time. My name is Alyssa Merton, and I'm with the Oceana College Access Network. And I wanted to share just a couple of other resources for you. This is our website. We have a resources page, which there's 4 different tabs. And the one that relates to the content that we'll be talking about tonight is all about paying for college. And as you can see there's pages with in-depth information concerning the FAFSA, the Michigan Student Aid Portal, scholarships and scholarship searches, loans, financial planning for college, and then paying for college. So there's quite a host of information there, and our website is www.oceanacan.org. So definitely take a look at that. Another resource where we will be sharing all of these Paying for College virtual series is on our YouTube page. And that is also Oceanacan ! And so on our YouTube page, you'll be able to see the entire Paying for College information series. We'll have those posted by the end of this week. So this week we have with us Pat Paxton tonight from West Shore Community College. We're going to zoom over to this screen here. And we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to tonight's session. This is all about understanding financial aid. And again, we have Pat Paxton from West Shore Community College. But she's not speaking just about West Shore Community College, but speaking to understanding the financial aid process for any college in Michigan. So when you're applying for colleges, this is the process that you'll go through to access the most money to help pay for college. Again, my name's Alyssa Merton, and I'm with the Oceana College Access Network. This is the first in the series, our Paying for College series. Tomorrow night, we have the in-depth FAFSA 101 with the most exciting how to create an FSA ID. You want to make sure to join us for that session with Michael Belrose from Baker College. The following night on Wednesday, we'll be talking with Community Foundation staff all about scholarships, and they're going to be sharing about local scholarships, state and national scholarships, how to write the best essay, and everything concerning scholarships. And then on Thursday at 7 p.m., you can join us for Understanding the Basics of Student Loans, where we will be learning all about loan options to pay for college after you access the FAFSA and scholarships. So to get us started, we'll go ahead and have Pat get going on understanding the financial aid process. Thanks for joining.
Good evening and welcome everyone. Tonight we're just going to go over some of the basics, and as Alyssa mentioned, this is not for anyone to attend a specific college. It would be for any application to any college. So this is through the Department of Education, and so we're going to get started with understanding the financial aid process. So during the slides and presentation that we'll be providing tonight, we are going to talk about attending the college and the timeline for applying for aid. There are some definite times when you should begin the process to better provide you with the information that you want so that you know where your funding is coming from and how much funding you have and what you may need to look for from other resources. We'll also review FERPA laws, which is the federal, I can never remember what that definition is. So that is the right to students' privacy on their information and how that works differently from transitioning from a K-12 school into college. What is financial aid, who's eligible for it, and some important reminders and tips. So first off, you want to make sure that when you're planning your college admission, that you begin to decide where you're going to college, and that you want to begin at any point in time now. So schools do have their applications open, and when you do financial aid, you want to make sure that you have submitted an application to that college that you put on your application for financial aid so that they can be connected together. So May 1st is considered National College Decision Day, which means that you can apply to many colleges, but you might want to make that definite decision of where you're planning to attend by May 1st. Now the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, is the initial place where everyone begins their search for college funding. So that scholarship or that application opened on October 1st. So it is available right now, and that is the website is at studentaid.gov. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get later into the slides. So that application that students would be completing now will require 2020 federal tax information to go along with that. So that is for students and students who have to provide parent information. That's their parent information as well for 2020. Now, from now until June 1st, students want to be applying for scholarships. And as Alyssa mentioned, there will be an in-depth session on how to apply for scholarships, what type of materials that you want to compile to apply for those scholarships. And approximately now, let's see, you should begin receiving communication from financial aid offices once you've submitted a FAFSA anytime after November, but each college will differ. So it does not go on a specific timeline. Sometimes it just depends on exactly how quickly they're processing, and sometimes it will depend on their processes that they use and whether or not they're all up and running by the time they begin to receive those applications. And the fifth thing is that between April of 2022 and September of 2022, students want to make sure that all their funding is in place and that they have sufficient funding from all sources to cover their costs for the upcoming year. So you do want to make sure that you're prepared at the point in time where classes begin, that you know where all your funding is coming from. The other thing to be very aware of is that financial aid is a yearly process. This is not something that you do the first year that you're in college and then you don't have to revisit it. Unfortunately, because income changes from year to year, the financial aid application process changes, the pool of students change, so everything needs to be updated based on the next year's income information. So for 22-23, students will use 2020 tax information to complete that. So students want to file a FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, on or after October 1st of each year. So right now, students can apply for aid that they will be provided with funding for the school year of 22-23. And that began just this 1 month ago. So you want to regularly, after that period in time, check your college email and US mail for any communication that might come to you from the schools that you have selected. The reason for that is because you may need some additional information for their office to determine your funding status. So it's very important that you keep track of that. If they do ask you for any additional documents, sometimes they will have deadlines and want you to provide that information by a certain time. So the sooner you get that information to them, the more quickly you'll be able to get a result from them as far as what your funding may be. In addition to applying for financial aid, you want to try and get scholarship funds from other assistance sources, because sometimes grant assistance is not sufficient to cover all of your costs. So scholarships can be a big help. Sometimes it's only for books, maybe it's just a small amount, but every little bit will help to cover those costs that you're trying to, that can mount up. So scholarships can be, have published deadlines that come up throughout the year. So many times it's good to revisit some sites, see what's open. Sometimes they do want FAFSA results as well to determine scholarship status. So it's good to keep both of those things going about the same time. Once you have information about funding, if you determine that you want to pursue loans, or if you know that you aren't grant eligible, loans may be an option for you. And that is something that you want to pursue first through your school and the direct loan program. And then there are maybe other loan options through alternative loan programs, but you should really check out the direct loan program first and then progress on. One of the things that has become a recent issue for financial aid students is that funding can be provided for you for courses that are required for your program of study. So you do want to make sure that the courses that you're taking at your college or your institution are required for the program in which you're receiving that degree. If you have questions about that, many times you would work with advising staff or counselors to help you make the correct selection. So you do want to make a little bit of an effort as to what program you're actually pursuing. You should know that information, so when you meet with an advisor and they say, well, what degree are you working on, you would know what program you're trying to pursue, and therefore that will help them understand what courses are going to best meet your needs for that program. And you want to check your college student portal before each semester so that you can check your account balance and make sure that your funding that might appear on that student portal is sufficient to cover your costs. Because if you have to make your own payment plan, let's say you still have some leftover and you want to set up a monthly payment plan, you'll need to get the information from your school about exactly how to do that and what programs they use. So be prepared to check out a lot of that information through your student portal. Now FERPA, here's where they define those letters. In financial aid, we are very heavy on the acronyms. So FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And what this really means is that when a student is in school, in preschool through 12th grade, parents and legal guardians are able to secure any of the information about their students from the school. Unfortunately, once someone becomes a college student, that has to be granted to someone seeking that information by the student. So if you want to know what kind of funding your student has, what kind of grades they're getting, what their results might be on tests and homework assignments and that type of thing, those are things that the student will have to grant you the permission to do. And that's because of this Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So your student is now, in the eyes of the college, an adult and a college student, and therefore if you need their permission to see that information, you'll want to work with your student in order to do that. So what institutions can release in relation to a student is directory information, name, address, phone number, and that's pretty much it. Without that release on file. So unfortunately, it's sometimes difficult for parents or guardians to get the information that they need without that release. So each school should have information about the FERPA requirements and guidelines, and they should be available out on their website. So if someone has questions about that, you'll want to check with each specific university and how they handle that process.
Hey Pat, we just had a question in the chat. I'm wondering, can you give just a little explanation of what a student portal is, and help us understand what those are at each school?
So when a student is accepted as at a college or a university, many times they will have access to personal information, and usually they have a username and password that allows them to get into their own specific information. And that portal will have an enormous amount of information sometimes. It will have your class, it will have the class schedule or the courses a student has selected for a semester. It will have their grades from in the past. They will have financial aid information. That is where we put information about documents that a student may need to complete their financial aid processing. So each school creates one of those accounts for students in order to store all of their information. And that is a wealth of information for students. So whatever school a student is going to, they really want to find out where that information, how they get to it, and how to navigate the different options that are available out on that site.
Okay, that
So
makes
for West
sense.
Shore students, that is called My West Shore, and many other institutions have something similar that it refers to for their institution.
Great. So it sounds like a portal is kind of like the website that a student would use that has all their personal information for the school on it, but it's called a portal. Makes sense. Thank you.
Correct. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the free application for federal student aid, one of those acronyms popping up again, FAFSA. And that is located out at the Department of Education website at www.studentaid.gov. Now, studentaid.gov has a number of different areas, and has a wealth of information in all types of student aid. So sometimes it's beneficial to go out and take a look around at that other than to just do the FAFSA. But when you get to that studentaid.gov website, what you will be looking for is the application or the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Now, the thing to keep in mind about that free application for federal student aid is it's the gateway to financial aid, and it is the beginning step in the process, and it houses a lot of funding programs by completing that application. So students want to begin that process as soon as possible. So it is open now at the www.studentaid.gov site. Now, a student has to file before June 30th of 2023. So that is a year from now. So we are in 21 right now and going into 22. So 23 is quite some time away. It's not this June. It's the following June. So you have a whole year, and part of that is because students are starting early, so it's open for quite a length of time. Now, if you want to be considered for some of Michigan's state programs, they do prefer a filing deadline of March 1st, 2022. So if you're looking at things like Michigan Competitive Scholarship, Michigan Tuition Grant, you do want to have your application in the system before March 1st of 2022. The 22-23 FAFSA, which is what students will complete now for fall semester 22 and 23 funding, it uses 2020 income data, and that's income data for both parents and students, for students that have to provide parent information. And we do like to extend our assistance if students are interested in getting assistance with the FAFSA. We are more than happy to help students. We are not particular about whether you are a West Shore student, a Mason County student, an Oceana County student. We just want to try and make the process easier for you and a little bit less stressful, and for you to get your information accurate so that you don't have to make corrections and get frustrated. So that is our offer to students that might like assistance. Now, the FSA ID and password, Alyssa said that there would be some additional assistance on exactly how to do that in one of the later sessions. So the key pieces are each person should create their own FSA ID. And part of that is because it is personal information that you're putting together, and you are signing those documents that you're submitting to the Department of Education, and they want to make sure that you keep that information private. So parents should not create FSA IDs for students, and students should not create FSA ID for parents. That can sometimes result in issues about signing the FAFSA. Also, sometimes what it does is it confuses people. Now, did I do this for me, or did I do that for my students? So it's much easier if each of you keep that information for yourself. Also, parents, you will use the same FSA ID for each of your children if you have more than one college student. And if you yourself are a college student, that FSA ID will be used for you on your financial aid application as well. Also, email addresses. When you set up an FSA ID, they're asking you now for email addresses, and they also ask for phone numbers too if you want to use your phone number to verify your password or change your password. So it is recommended that you use an email address that is not going to expire, and B, one that you're going to try and maintain access to so that you don't forget the password or have it expire, so that you can get to your information. So you're going to be a college student for a number of years, so you do want to have an email address that you're going to consistently have available. Also, phone numbers periodically change, so if you are going to use your phone number to reset your password, you will want to make sure that you keep that FSA ID updated should you change your phone number. Now, there is assistance available if your FSA ID should get locked, or you should forget your username, or your email is no longer valid. You do have to call the Federal Student Aid Information Center, and that number is listed here on the screen at 1-800-433-3243. It is kind of voice activated, and you can say ID help to resolve FSA ID issues. They also have a number of other pieces of information that can be helpful out at the Student Information Center. And so if you do have issues with your FAFSA, sometimes you can call there for assistance. You can also call our office for assistance. We would help as well. If you have some general questions, we can try and help you navigate their system. So let's talk about who's eligible for financial aid. So we have to look at a number of different pieces in relation to that. And so first of all, federal and state aid, students need to be U.S. citizens or a permanent resident with an alien registration number. Also, a high school diploma has to be earned, a GED or recognized equivalent. And someone has to have a valid social security number, and it cannot be a social security number that's used for work purposes only. And a student needs to be enrolled in an eligible degree or certificate program that is financial aid eligible. Some schools also have institutional funding, and those institutional funds will just be determined by each organization that is providing the funding. So a student who might apply to a college or university, or even a technical college, if they meet the requirements for a program that institution provides, then they may be eligible. And sometimes in those instances, funding can be on a first come, first served basis. So sometimes it is wise to be early when you're applying for some of that funding. So federal funding related to FAFSA covers a couple of different areas. And so, as I stated before, everyone needs to start with the FAFSA because that's the gateway to the programs some of the programs that are listed here. Specifically, those federal programs, I like to tell students that the FAFSA is the application for funding to the Pell Grant program. Pell Grant is where the funds come from and funds the FAFSA application process. So it's Pell Grant assistance that students receive by submitting a FAFSA. That's the first and primary program that many people are familiar with. Then there is also additional funding from a program called the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and that is many times provided by each individual institution. There's also a Teach grant for students that are pursuing teaching programs, and there's Work Study. Work Study is a form of assistance, it's financial aid assistance, but you're paid for working at a job. And so you might receive a biweekly or weekly paycheck through the school that you're attending. We did make reference to loans. There are a number of different types of loans. There are subsidized loans where the government assists with paying the interest on the loan while a student is in school, and an unsubsidized loan where the government does not assist with the interest. It is recommended that students pay interest on their unsubsidized loans if at all possible while in school, because ultimately you pay interest on your interest if you do not do that. Then there are Parent Plus loans where a parent can apply for funding assistance to help a student with their education, and that can be in addition to subsidized and unsubsidized as well. And then there also is a grant now for children of Iraq, Afghanistan service members. So there are some state programs that we'd like to share a little bit about. There's Michigan Works. Michigan Works is a funding source that many times will help students with career paths that are underserved in the state of Michigan. There's the Tuition Incentive Program, which is a state program for students who may have received Medicaid while in junior high or high school, and they become eligible for the state program, which is called Tuition Incentive, and that helps students with tuition and fees. Then there's the Michigan Competitive Scholarship Program, and this is also through the state of Michigan, and this is the one where the deadline is that you want to apply by March 1st with the FAFSA. Students also have to have appropriate scores on their SAT or ACT, whichever the case may be, when they took that testing for college entrance. So it's more than just submitting the FAFSA. It also has to have some scores through the SAT or ACT. Then there's the Michigan Tuition Grant that is funding for private and proprietary schools. And then there's another state program called Gear Up. This is gaining early awareness and readiness for undergraduate programs. And there are a select number of students that are eligible for funding from that program. And then there's the Michigan Fostering Futures Scholarship. This is for students who were in foster care, and there is a yearly application for funding from that program. There is the Children of Veterans Tuition Grant. This is for children of deceased or disabled Michigan veterans. There is an application for that program as well, and it does have some program limits, but it's a wonderful program if some of our veterans' children are interested in attending college. That's a program that can help with tuition and fees. And then there's Talent for Tomorrow Scholarship. That's something that's relatively new. I'm not very familiar with it. We don't have many students that are participating in that program now. And then there's Mason County Promise, and there are sometimes other area promise grants that can be researched, checking into those things throughout your area. So some information about funding that might not necessarily be related to FAFSA, and that is institutional, county, state, and national scholarships. So students want to research some of that, and I think that Melissa and her LCAN group is going to be presenting some additional information about scholarships. At West Shore, we do have a list of some scholarship websites for people that might want to take a look at that. So if anyone is interested in seeing some of that information, we do have that available for our presentation nights as well. Some people like to utilize educational savings plans, such as the Michigan Education Trust and the 529 plans. And those are usually set up when students are younger and are then drawing on that to help cover costs of tuition, fees, room and board, that type of thing. Some students are eligible for the Michigan Indian tuition waiver. That is another application that has to be completed by the tribe, and it is sent to the, if I can remember, the Civil Rights Commission, I believe. Usually they have to verify the Indian tuition percentage in order to be eligible for the waiver. And that is a waiver for tuition assistance. And now there's a new scholarship program that's just coming out. It's called the Michigan Echo Scholarship. This is going to be for students who are undocumented in Michigan and also who have been frontline workers. So this is something that's relatively new that's coming on board. So we don't have a whole lot of information about it, but hopefully we'll have some students that will be able to receive funding through that program as well. Sometimes employers will assist students with tuition, and that can be very beneficial, especially if you're trying to better yourself with your employment. And so some of those programs, they will complete the appropriate forms for the institution to indicate that they can be billed for the tuition and fee costs of coursework for a student. Students in the military can also sometimes receive tuition assistance. They have to go through their branch of service application process. And then students that are no longer in the military but have veterans benefits can also receive assistance if applying through the VA for their, they have to do the application for the process. And then the VA is another program where courses that a student takes need to be required for their program. So that's something that the VA watches very carefully. So I think we're getting pretty close to the end of our information here. So just some important tips and reminders. Attend college events that will help you learn a lot of these things that you're unfamiliar with, such as orientation, college day, career fairs. Collect a lot of that information, ask questions, make sure that you have all the information you need to be your own best resource in relation to your college information. Know where the places are on campus that are going to be important to you, other than just the cafeteria in your dorm room. You want to know where the financial aid office is, the business office, the registrar's office, advising, career service, campus services, tutoring, all the things that you're going to need to be successful in your career in college. Understand some of the things that are provided for you in your financial aid information. One of those pieces is called cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is what it costs you to attend an institution for a school year. It doesn't include just tuition and fees, but it includes other things. If you're traveling to campus, it can include transportation. If you're living on campus, it can include room and board. There is also a room and board component for students living off campus. So make sure you understand what the total cost is, not just what your tuition and fees are. And access that college student portal frequently. Make sure that you are up to date on any of the information that's provided for you by your college. Set up and continually access college assigned email. At West Shore, all students have their own email address, and it is a West Shore email address. Sometimes this is where information has to be sent because the Department of Education makes rules about that. Also, it's where college staff and faculty may send notifications, so students want to keep up to date on that. And it's up to, if a student is changing schools, it's up to a receiving college what credits may be accepted in relation to your new program at your new school. So be familiar with that if you're changing schools. Also, you may receive some credit for military experience or work experience. And so all colleges are different in relation to that. So you really want to check that out at each institution that you may be applying to. And last but not least, if you have questions, we can hopefully provide answers. We are willing to do that regularly, and you can reach our office by calling 231-843-5518. And there are a number of us that answer that line. or you can send us an email at FINAID. FIN is short for financial, so we just abbreviated that as finaid@westshore.edu. Any questions that we can try and help with this evening?
Hi, Pat. It's Jody. I actually do have a question, and I'm wondering if you can help. So if a student, and it's really common for students to transfer in their first year, and so my child transferred from a university to West Shore, and
Okay.
they had he has the Michigan competitive scholarship, but that doesn't automatically transfer, does it?
Well, the student has to notify the state that they're changing schools when they are eligible for Michigan Competitive. Michigan Competitive will apply to the first school on their FAFSA. So if they change that, or if they change their mind after they've submitted their FAFSA, they do need to notify the state, because then the student is put on a roster for that school.
Okay.
So your student might still be on the roster for the former school and not for West Shore.
I guess is yes, which is exciting because there might be some money.
Yeah, every little bit helps.
Right. Okay, that was my main question. I think like all the information you provided here was super helpful. So thank you for putting all that together. There's so much for students to go through and learn.
There is, and sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. So I think the idea of dishing it out a little bit in chunks and different topics might be a real helpful method for people to kind of grasp and understand it. And I think many times doing it at least the first time does really make people a little bit more comfortable with it for the future. So we have some families that come in year after year, but they just want a little bit of that comfort to make sure that they're answering the questions the right way and doing the best for their students. So we're more than willing to help, and we don't really mind if it's students going to another college or not. We're just more than happy to help. That's the community, and community college, we're more than willing to do that.
Awesome.
Well, we really appreciate that, Pat, and thank you for being here and sharing with us tonight. More information can be found in many places. Like you said, your office is open for assistance. Also coming up tomorrow is going to be a more in-depth dive into that FAFSA, where we'll take a look at the actual application and some of the questions on it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to get started and what happens after the FAFSA is submitted and what verification is and all of those good things. And then on Wednesday, be sure to join for Scholarship 101, which is everything all about scholarships from our local community foundations. And then on Thursday, we will close out this Paying for College virtual series with student loans. And we'll be talking all about student and parent loans and options and opportunities for getting loans for college. Additionally, in both Oceana and Mason County, there are sessions at the high schools where financial aid reps, such as Pat, and others from other colleges will be in person, in attendance, at the one in Hart on November 16th. There will also be pizza. I don't know about the ones in Mason, but Oceana is cooler anyway. So there will be pizza, dinner. Students will bring their Chromebooks, and we will actually dive right into each individual personal FAFSA, and you will have one-on-one assistance with financial aid reps from 6 to 8 on November 16th. So be sure to check that out and sign up in your counseling office for that extra assistance. Thank you for joining us, and we will close out this session, and hopefully we'll see you back again tomorrow night at 7.